something is happening, whether it's in a spiritual plane or a physical plane, but you cannot fake PTSD. You can't fake it. It's impossible. And these people all suffer from some form of PTSD. So first of all, let's talk about what the experience would be like, how profound that would be like. Let's create a safe situation. You have a deck. You're looking out at your backyard, and you're just sitting there, and maybe you're having a brew, maybe you're having an iced tea, whatever. And then around the corner comes a chimpanzee. It just pokes up for a little bit, and then it goes back around the corner. How much is that going to jack you up? You're going to be telling people, there was a chimpanzee. I swear to God, it came around the corner. We know chimpanzees exist.
Yeah.
But the context is so out of whack, that is going to completely jack you up. Now imagine an alien walking around. So that's what it's like for them. I asked them in my first experiencer group, I said, if I could say to you tomorrow, none of this will happen, or I could, make this stop right now, would you want all this to stop? Every single one of them said no. They are definitely interacting with people, even with regards to technology. They are inspiring.
Chris Lehto, welcome to Lehto Files.
Today we're diving into the intersection of UFOs, media, and perception with filmmaker Dean Alioto. He's best known for the McPherson Tape, a 1989 found footage film that blurred the line between fact and fiction, fooling many into believing it was real. His work has influenced UFO documentaries, so we'll explore how media shapes UAP narratives and whether we're any closer to the truth. Dean, welcome to Lehto Files. Thanks for being here.
Chris, thank you for having me.
So your film, the McPherson Tape, was mistaken for real UAP footage. What does that reveal about how people interpret evidence of the phenomenon?
It was a real education for me because up until that moment, I had limited information about the phenomenon. Again, this is pre-internet. So all of the cases that I heard came to me through In Search Of, or through, I remember as a kid going to see the first and only so far theatrical UFO documentary that was Chariots of the Gods. And so it was, just me as a kid, maybe going to a bookstore and seeing a book on Bermuda Triangle or UFOs or whatever, and seeing all that and being into sci-fi as a young budding filmmaker. And then that mixed with wanting to make my first film before I was 25, like all of my idols did. And then also reading Communion. When I read Communion, Whitley Strieber's book on his memoir on alien abductions, it blew my mind. And I thought, oh my God, I need to film this. And how would I do that? But I want to film it like I'm experiencing it. And so I thought, what is the equivalent of a memoir cinematically? What would that be? And then I hit on the idea, because I was doing a lot of wedding videos with a buddy of mine, to film a home video where a family's together and then they see a UFO and see aliens, and then try to hide out in their cabin, their house in the hills, and then one by one, get abducted, all shot in one take from a 16-year-old's home video camera. Nice. And so I didn't think, it would become this big cult thing that it has for both the UFO community and the horror found footage community. But it was just this fun, creative little thing that we just did almost as a gimmick, but it ended up working to the extent that it ended up at the International UFO Congress Convention in the early 90s, where it had no credits on it. Someone had edited off the credits and injected into the UFO community, and they all believe, oh shit, this is real. And we finally have that smoking gun. And so it showed at the convention, UFO convention, and a Lieutenant Colonel Don Ware claimed it was authentic. 40 years Air Force intelligence endorsing this. And then that was it. So that taught me a lot about how things are presented and how there are things that need to be debunked. Absolutely. And so the repercussion of that was that I went on national TV and I debunked my own movie. I think I'm the only filmmaker who's ever done that. But I didn't create it to do any hoaxing. It was just I wanted to feel, and I wanted audiences to feel what it's like to be abducted for the first time, and what that would be like. So that's kind of my take on it.
Had you had any UAP experiences up to that point?
No, like Spielberg, I've never seen anything. That's the only thing so far that we share in common. My mother did. In the 70s, she and my stepfather were in Half Moon Bay, Northern California, and they saw this. They thought it was a boat coming in from the ocean to the shore, and it got brighter and brighter. And as it was like maybe 50 yards, 75 yards out from shore, they realized that this this light behind it is this silver craft, and it's hovering above the water. And they're looking at this thing, and they're not sure if it was skimming the water, going in and out, but they see it and it stops, and then there's a beat, and then she says it took off. Like it was almost like it was smeared. It would just disappeared, and they knew, both of them knew, this is something that they've never seen before. And my stepfather was a hippie, so he ran after it yelling, "Take me, take me." But I heard this, this story, and I was so envious. As a kid, I'm like, I wasn't there, so I missed it. But yeah, so I think because I want to see it so badly, I'm being forced to recreate it for others.
So Hollywood, it's really played a major role in, shaping UFO narratives. You mentioned Spielberg there. Do you think that's helping disclosure, or do you think it's muddying the waters?
No, it's definitely helping. I mean, I point to certain films. I did not influence the phenomenon. I consulted on it, as many people had, with James Forweek on it. And what I love about the phenomenon is, and while I wanted to help out and donate my time that I could on it, was that I wanted to see this kind of the almanac of UFOs. It's like, if you're interested, you're UFO curious, you start with the phenomenon and you see it, and it gives you a great overview. And because it's military, these guys can articulate it much better than, your average Joe. And so I think that was, that came out, and it was funny when that came out, and I was working on my docs at the same time. I remember thinking there's going to be more UFO movies, like fictionalized version of this. They're going to be coming out. And I kept saying to, my filmmaking buddies, you start thinking about ideas with UFOs, because it's not that it's a hot topic. People want to see this. They want to visualize it and see it. And so sure enough, Spielberg is now doing a huge event one. Jerry Bruckheimer, who has done tons of films, Top Gun, always great films. He got together with the writer director of Maverick, and they're doing their own one. I think that one's called maybe is it Disclosure or Unidentified? So it's happening right now, and so that's kind of how it works. The zeitgeist, what's going on in reality. Hollywood jumps on board, but the thing about it is that it can get screwed up. It can get jacked up. So I'm glad that these big players are coming into it, because most likely they're going to do it right, especially Spielberg. His is going to be epic.
And what do you mean by it can get jacked up? Like, what gets messed up?
Because people will start taking it, and the thing about the phenomenon is that it is so fantastical that you almost want to subdue the fantastical and then just present it. As an example, you see Arrival, which is one of the best, first contact films. In fact, the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, it's not all about that. I mean, yes, you see these aliens, but it's more of a cerebral experience. And experiencers will tell you this is much more transcending on a higher level, other than doing like Battlefield, Earth, or was it Battleground Los Angeles, where it's just, let's, fight them, and it's going to be this big raging thing, and it becomes a big cartoon. My favorite film is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And the reason why it is that it has something that no other film in this space, except for maybe 2001, had, which is it has awe. It has awe and mystery. There's no bad guys in Close Encounters, zero. And you don't see an alien until the end of the film. If you were to make that film today, the studio would say, no. Before the first act, you got to drop a couple aliens. They got to land. We got to see what they look like. So it's this anticipation. And so the spirituality aspect of the phenomenon, to me, trumps any special effect. Seeing Roy Neary, the main character in Close Encounters, start to lose his shit, which, this phenomenon grabs you and kind of, excuse the expression, makes you its bitch. And so you start building mounds of certain shapes or things in, mashed potatoes and living rooms. And so it does that. And to not include the psychological effect of, the ontological shock, as Dr. John Mack had, is that to me has to be embedded in anything that you're doing in this topic, in this field, if you want it to stand out and replicate anything that's happening, for these experiencers. So that's what I'm concerned about, is the too fantastical, the big, Marvel type explosions and all that shit. It's all here. This is where it's more terrifying than anything in the brain.
From your perspective, what do you think's the biggest UFO story being overlooked today? What would you make a movie on?
Well, I was working on trying to get one going on like Aerial School. The Aerial School phenomenon, shout out to Randy Nickerson's brilliant documentary. That to me is an open and shut case. I worked on crime shows for a couple decades. And if I apply the metric to that of how I would investigate that event, the witnesses and everything, 100, not 60, it was closer to 100, and a teacher who all witnessed this. In broad, it's like everything that a ufologist would beg for. Yep. Can we have it in the middle of the day? And can we have witnesses that are from all different backgrounds and then be able to, draw it? The only thing that's missing is it was 94. And so they didn't have cell phones. And maybe that's by design, as they knew that they could come in such a brazen way. So that case, to me, is legendary. Certainly Rendlesham Forest is there. And I covered it in the new documentary, The Alien Perspective, and we come back to it in the sequel as well, part 2. But yeah, those are the two cases that I go, wow, this is, if you hook me up to a lie detector and said, is this real or not, to put a gun to my head and said, is this real or not? You got to pick the right answer. I would say, yes, go ahead. This is it.
You got to pick the right answer.
Yeah.
It seems like we were chatting a little before about AI. If you look at AI and deepfake technology, how do we separate real UAP evidence from manufactured ones? It seems like any single video that comes out can easily be proven as not real,
Yeah. On that front, to be honest, we're pretty screwed. Because you look at the videos and you can just now occasionally see that someone will have 6 fingers or will only have 4. And it'll go from 5 to 4. So the animation, the AI imagery still has some bugs, but that's going to get worked out within the next year or two. There's a lot of footage going out right now that I see on Facebook, where this baby polar bear is all covered in tar, and then these people come and rescue it, and there's another one with a seal, and it's all fake. And the thing is, I know this stuff because I work in the film business, and I've used versions of AI, and so I can see it coming a mile away, but it's getting really, really good. But for your average person who would post pictures anyway and go, I'm not saying this is real or not, but take a look at it, that's the same thing as disseminating it. And so if I have a question about anything, I'm not posting it. What I'll do is I'll reach out to Greg Bishop, or I'll reach out to Mark D'Antonio. I'll reach out to my guys and say, hey, what do you think about this? But everything is suspect now, brother. So it's weird. I don't know how we're going to combat that. I was on The Unexplained with Howard Hughes and his great UK doc before he passed. And he said, I would like to task you with being the person who's the watchdog for this. And I said, I wouldn't give that to my worst enemy because it's going to be way too difficult to tell. So you have to look at the source. And so when sources come out and they say, especially stuff like these, UFOs just flying around, well, I don't want to put my name out there because I don't want this or that. I'm like, then don't put the footage out there. Stand by the footage or don't put her out there. That's one way. We can insist on the provenance of the shots that we're seeing, the footage that we're seeing. Otherwise, it just goes into the possible bullshit bin.
What about where you have like people who verify the identity? Like basically I verified a guy's identity in Australia because he didn't want to go public. And then basically said, I verified it. So then it's on me to actually, not give away the source.
That's the only exception I would consider, because then it becomes about you and your credibility. If someone's doing it for reasons like, I heard this insanely fantastical story. I was lucky enough, honored to go do some experiencer support groups. And I heard this amazing story about someone who was in Homeland Security. And he told me the story and I'm like, oh my God, I need to get this on camera. I've never heard anything like this. This is exceptional and it's going to help this and that. And he said, sorry, man, I can't do that. I've got, relatives that are also in this, field and everything. And I can't risk that. And so later on, they'll probably, do that when they're in a retirement situation. But I respect that if those repercussions, but I need someone to vouch for this. Like if I was then going to tell his story and he said, you can do my story, just not with me and change some things, I could vouch for that. But barring that, these people who are just dumping things out there that no one knows who the hell they are, no, that doesn't fly. I don't want to see it.
I've seen as well on YouTube, like it'll be some video. It looks sort of real. I've done a lot of work with Digital Combat Simulator where you can take, very accurate fighter planes and bombers, etc. And they'll use this simulator and then make these videos and it looks like a UFO video. They'll put basically a clickbait title, and then you really have to click on it and then go into the description. And then it says, we do AI videos, but those videos will have hundreds of thousands of views, like way more views than my videos get, and it's like totally fake clickbait stuff. And I'm like, how does this, get to stay on YouTube, but they'll censor me if I come out against, the government or say that the government agents or, agencies are lying to us, et cetera. I believe I have been censored for that.
Kind of a hypocrisy, right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, as an example, and I know that people still believe it's real because there's an essence of it that feels real. The Skinny Bob video.
Yep.
So that has, in my book, been debunked. And it was traced, like you said, the roots were traced to the guy who did the alien for Paul, that really funny comedy with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost.
Yeah.
And
that was a good movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were doing some test versions of it. How real do they want this to look? And they decided, no, let's make it more fun. But it was associated with the special effect guy that did that. And, I used to joke all the time and go, how did that big head get through that little turtleneck? Because he's wearing a mod turtleneck. Usually no one reports that, yeah, it's kind of a turtleneck that has a little, you could see that it's clearly man-made turtleneck. But no, so it's, the thing is we're torn, right? Because there's an aspect of the phenomenon that is pure entertainment. And we want to see this. It's fun. I mean, it can be really fun. And so when I see stuff like that, it's not that I want to discourage that stuff, like wipe it off the internet. It's interesting, and it follows some of the stories that are portrayed, the way the alien is, the big eyes and the blinking and all that stuff. It's entertaining, it's interesting. So I don't want to abolish it. What I want to abolish is the them saying, purporting that this is real, this isn't. And so it muddies, again, it muddies the water. But I think that, people, it's a creative outlet for some of these people as well, doing these things. So it's what you do with the information that is more important. What is the audience going to do with that information?
I was surprised. I saw an X post from James Fox, and he said he doesn't own the phenomenon anymore, but he still promotes it. You can watch it for free. That's crazy. As a filmmaker, how does that happen where you just don't own the film anymore?
Because a film is a commodity. And so sometimes that commodity reverts back to others, or sometimes it's something that you're selling, or it takes off. I've managed to retain my first film, the UFO one, the McPherson Tape. All these years, there was a period where it looked like I had lost it and had to go back into the contracts and had to talk to someone who had been involved in the remake that I did for UPN, Alien Abduction in Lake County. And so I was really happy to get that back and get confirmation that I had it back. And I learned a big lesson, which is hold on to your library. No matter what, you don't do that. It's like your home, So, but it does happen.
You've heard, I'm sure, I don't know, conspiracy theories, if you will, that intel agencies or government agencies, with nefarious aims have interfered with Hollywood, or they've used Hollywood to, I don't know, enforce the stigma or, basically muddy the waters in general. Have you seen any evidence of that?
Well, Bryce Zabel tells an interesting story of where someone from the government, some clandestine, that sound like aspect of it, was coming in and making themselves known and knew stuff that they shouldn't know. That was certainly creepy. And I know some people talk about Escape to Witch Mountain, the remake, that some government people came in. The problem I have with that is it seems extremely unnecessary because writers are free. A third of my IP that I create, my screenplays, and I've got 3 UFO films that I'm working on getting going, is I'm free to do whatever I want to. No government official is going to come in and say, I can't tell this or can't tell that. As far as them being involved creatively and saying, oh, let me be the technical consultant on this. I don't know that I've seen anything that I felt was neutered by that involvement. But, I have friends who, associates who have said that they've had to work in concert with such people like Dinah Pasulka. But so I haven't seen anything where the government has come out. As an example, when E.T. came out, that was a film where I came home and I told my mother, I'm going to be a filmmaker, because I was the middle messed up child that dreamed of aliens. Single mother raising 3 kids. I'm like, oh my God, this is my childhood that I consider this broken childhood, and it was celebrated. And I thought this is a good time for the aliens to show up, because it'd be like, oh, you're going to be like E.T. and it'll be this cute thing. And you won't look like a mushroom or a frog. You look a little more like us, but, and then that didn't happen. So, a lot of times people had said stuff. The late Robbie Graham looked into that, silver screen saucers, that Spielberg was maybe, the theories were that he was maybe hijacked. No, he had that idea since 1964. So I've not seen any evidence of it, to be honest, myself.
And you basically entered the field with an Experiencer account, right? By reading Communion, or you said really that changed your mind. So, and you've made a film, at least one, about experiencers, from the viewpoint of experiencers, although it was fiction. So what is your take? What is your impression of the experiencer phenomenon? It seems like something we can't really talk about. It's kind of too stigmatized or too woo.
Yeah, it was funny. When I watched the rough cut for the phenomenon, I said to James, I go, how come you're not getting into any of the experiencer stuff? I mean, now experiencers, the term is used for anyone that has seen them. And like Sean Cahill, former chief petty officer, will tell you he's an experiencer, because not only that, he's had other experience as well, but that, and even for Kevin Day, he was looking at the radar. It was an experience that's profoundly affected him. When I talked to James Fox about this, I said, you're not really getting into that aspect of the experiencers. I said, but I get what's going on, is that you're showing the tail of the dog, and the audience can figure out that it's attached to this dog, where I'm showing the whole dog. I'm going to show everything. And so for me, what hasn't happened in the UFO phenomenon, I'm almost to the point that I think that there's a little bit of a fatigue setting in, where you have all these great people coming in and talking about this, whether it's Lou or it's David Grush, people coming out and saying all this stuff is happening. So I think where the general public is right now, it's like, give me the tailpipe of the UFO and dump it on the U.S. congressional hearing table. That would be nice. That's next level. That's it. Or give me a dead alien hand or something. And until that happens, that's kind of played itself out, I think. What hasn't happened, and I think this is coming, and I'm in support of this, and I'm working on this, and I have a documentary that addresses exactly this, which is the Experiencer's Viewpoint, their addition to this narrative. And what I mean by that is there's been no room made at the table for the experiencers. There hasn't. So people have had up close disclosure of their own. Why aren't they at any of these hearings? I mean, there's more evidence to support that than there is this other hardware aspect of it. And so you have, what I mean by that is you have spouses, or you have relatives, or you have people that are seeing loved ones that strange phenomenons are happening, where paralysis happens, light coming in. And so I think that's the next wave of this happening. And so I feel like both of them are important. One is in the physical, and one may be physical or spiritual, or in, who knows, in the astral plane. I've talked to Lou Elizondo about that maybe, these vehicles are traveling in the astral plane, because sometimes people see deceased loved ones on these crafts. And so for me, the next wave, the thing that's important is the experiencers, because a lot of times, as you know, you're meeting people who are in the service, who are experiencers a lot. At the first experiencer support group I went to, there was a major in the Army, 35 years old, who was an experiencer. And he was there because they had never, they have two daughters. He had never told his kids, they were like around 5, 3 and 5, or 5 and 7, that he was an experiencer. And sometimes these beings who would interact with him, until they showed up one day. He woke up in the morning, before he got his coffee, and they showed him a picture of drawings that they made of these little stick figures, big heads. And he goes, "Sweetie, what are these?" And one of the daughters said, "Oh, these are the stick men that come to us, the skeleton men that sometimes come to us at night when we're sleeping." And that's what got him into the support group, because he was like, "I don't know what to do about this." So the short answer to this is I believe, as Dr. John Mack believes, that something is happening, whether it's in a spiritual plane or a physical plane, but you cannot fake PTSD. You can't fake it. It's impossible. And these people all suffer from some form of PTSD. So that to me is next level. And so I'm working on trying to champion that, but they all have to go hand in hand, right?
Do you think they're traumatized? Is it from the actual encounters themselves, or is it the reaction they get from everyday life, from the populace, from the stigma?
Well, I have two analogies for that. So first of all, let's talk about what the experience would be like, how profound that would be like. Let's create a safe situation. You have a deck. You're looking out at your backyard, and you're just sitting there, and maybe you're having a brew, maybe you're having an iced tea, whatever. And then around the corner comes a chimpanzee. It just pokes up for a little bit and then it goes back around the corner. How much is that going to jack you up?
Uh-huh.
You're going to be telling people there was a chimpanzee. I swear to God, it came around the corner. We know chimpanzees exist,
Yeah.
but the context is so out of whack that is going to completely jack you up. Now imagine an alien walking around. So that's what it's like for them. Now, when it comes to having sympathy, empathy for these people, someone will say like if someone said, I was abducted, no one ever says, really, you were abducted. Was it a black van? Was it a white van? Were the windows covered? Did they have duct tape and a rope inside? Really? No one does that. But they have no problem saying, oh, really? Was it a triangle craft? Was it an orb? And did you get the probe? So they have no problem making fun of them. And the truth of the matter is, these are people who experienced it. You could call someone who's been abducted by, a rapist, God forbid. You can call them an experiencer. They've experienced something insanely intense, but you give them more empathy than you're going to give someone else who's experiencing something beyond that.
Yeah, you mentioned Whitley Strieber, and he was, I think, one of the first people, right, to say that he was probed, essentially. And then when you research other experiencer accounts, I don't know if it's still common, because again, it's so stigmatized, but it seems like it was like almost every abduction is basically there's some sort of physical examination, and it's very obtrusive. It's very intrusive, this exam, to where it's basically, like you mentioned, essentially terrible experience.
Okay, so what do you think the probe is, the point of the probe?
Total speculation. I think there's some element of our body, of our systems that we don't understand. If you look at Eastern medicine or Buddhism, they talk about the chakras. You have the 5 chakras, and it starts at the base of your spine. It's going to be the red chakra, which is some sort of, who knows, some elemental power or something they relate it to. And if you look, that's where your main chakra is. That's where your reproductive organs are. Basically, it's kind of the meat of being human. We always think of the brain, et cetera, but the Egyptians just threw the brain away. So I think maybe it comes from some element of that where can actually go to some part of the human system that we don't understand. You mentioned the astral plane. I certainly think there's many elements of this whole phenomenon that we don't understand. So it could be related to that, or something more that we understand, which is, what are you eating, essentially? Or, it's just some sort of examination that we would do to any animal that we tagged out in the wild.
Right.
Yeah.
That to me, so when I interviewed Michael Masters, I said to him, I go, we got to talk about the probe, dude. What's up with that shit? Because that doesn't make sense to me. It just seems like it's kind of like domination over another species. It's humiliating and painful and everything else. And he says, no, it's a stool sample. We do the same thing. And we want that stool to be intact. You're not going to hang around and give a bear a laxative. It's going to change the composition of everything in order to get the waste to see, all that stuff. So he says, no, it's this thing that'll go in and we'll take it in its shape, if you will, and extract it. So he says, it makes total sense to me. And I had never thought about it in such a primal way almost of research. And so that, kind of makes sense to me that you would be following up and getting those samples. And, I don't know if it's like you come here from wherever you're coming from, that we can't come up with a better way to do that. But maybe there's just some things that are just physically, it is what it is. But it is, reported and has been reported for a long time. But yeah, again, Whitley Strieber was, kind of the pioneer. It's like before Barney and Betty Hill, there were still abductions going on. And so it wasn't that it started in 61. This was the first time that it came out in the press. And because it was a situation where you had a mixed couple, that was even more of a dynamic to it. So there were certain other things that made this get on the map more than other abduction stories.
Yeah, but that really seems like you can't even talk about it. Like you mentioned, no one's talking about. You can't even say the probe. This video might even be censored for even talking about that stuff. You get the little plaque in the front about alien abductions, but that's why I think any speculations we apply or any ideas that we apply towards the phenomenon are going to be strictly from a human perspective, obviously, based on human technology. And if you look at the phenomenon, all the alien encounters, it's obviously they're not human. It seems very clear they're not human, and they don't have human technology. They have advanced technology, and they don't seem like they're necessarily in our dimension, in the physical dimension, or like you mentioned earlier, Lou Elizondo, speculating again that maybe they're in the astral plane. So that's why I think it is some sort of health check, or maybe even taking something like taking chakra or balancing it or something, not necessarily chakra, but some sort of advanced technology or metaphysical aspect that we don't understand yet. Like we would just consider it a stool sample, right? Because that's what we would do, because that's what we understand. Right. But it could be that it's checking all of your internals, all at once, that they're one internal check. There's some advanced technologies. But either way, it seems to happen all the time. It seems like every abduction, that's like what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's also we're learning more and more. Of course, Eastern medicine has known this forever. And in Europe, many parts of Europe, that your gastronomy, your internal system controls everything more than your heart, your brain. It controls, it regulates your body, and what you put in it affects you greatly. And so that, pulling that stool sample, we might, like you said, be looking at that as being kind of like a trivial aspect, like drawing blood, but it may have more stuff, and it might be spiritual. For me, it's like I go down the rabbit hole so hard in the technology, this new tech, and what is anti-gravity like? And we don't even know what gravity is and all this stuff. What are gravitons? And it's all a theory. But I keep going, okay, let's simplify it. Like the best technologies are things that can be streamlined, that aren't terribly complicated. The watch, winding a watch, this is pretty damn smart, and it's clean and everything. And, you got digital watches as well. But I keep thinking that it's something that allows for physics to be broken. And I don't want to say be broken, to be manipulated. Maybe, kind of like stepping aside with how it would normally be. I mean, even Einstein said there's, spooky, and he hated it, spooky, theories on this stuff, science and physics. So I feel like because we're not even a type 1 species, we can't imagine what the new physics would be. But I think what's going on with the way that they seem to appear like in a ghost form, and some people do say, a lot of them say that they seem to be translucent. So you can say that's interdimensional, or you could say it's going in and out of the spiritual realm, which is dimensional. But I don't rule out that they could be us from the future. That, to me, it's kind of like the Beatles. I've used this analogy that it starts out, you go, oh, I love Paul McCartney, he's the guy. Then you go, no, I think John Lennon, I think he's the shit. And then you go, no, George Harrison, very spiritual. And then Ringo is just such a cool, sweet guy. And so I've done that with theories, from another planet. Then for the longest time, it was all about Jacques Vallée, dimensions. They're from another dimension. And then talking to, masters, it was like, this is the most prosaic out of everything, almost. Because traveling from another, plane and or another universe, galaxy system, coming here, that's a long way to get here. If you're folding time, not as long. But the odds that another being from another planet is going to be like us, bipedal, and a humanoid is kind of remote. And so my big question for masters was, okay, your job as an anthropological biologist at Montana Tech, a professor, is to reverse engineer where we came from, the sludge, and how we got here, and how long that took. And so going forward, when are we going to get to this thing where would we look like this? And he said, absolutely, we're looking like this. Our heads are getting bigger, and he breaks the whole thing down as he's done. And in our show, we do that, and we do it with a little bit of animation, and we see how we are developing, and our eyes are getting bigger. We don't have as much hair. Our bodies don't need to be as profound and muscular as they did. And so, and we're also going to be, don't forget, genetically engineering some things. And some of it might be aesthetics, and others might be just, for other purposes that we can't imagine. And so it does seem like, because we are going to invent time travel, that's happening. I mean, I say it's happening because time is relative, so it's probably already happened. But from Einstein, everyone said that there was space to have this be created. So of course we would be coming back in time. And so why not come back during our period and through other periods? Why not? And so I don't rule out everything. I think we all have to be agnostic about this. So working on these documentaries for 7 years, 66 interviews, 4 countries. And what I'm left with is it may be none of the above, and it may be all of the above. I think it's all of the above. I learned mostly what I don't know, which it sounds kind of like a paradox, but I learned what I thought I knew that I didn't know. And that actually helped narrow it down to like almost like a belief system.
I was just thinking today, kind of on that topic, if you think back, let's say many thousands of years, and you had just a human tribe, if you look at Papua New Guinea, actually, the human tribes don't go into the nearby neighborhoods because it's so dangerous. Surrounding them, it basically, they'll be friends with one tribe that's on, to the west of them. They'll be enemies to the one that's to the north of them. They'll be neutral to the ones of the east. They'll have a water agreement, the ones of the south, but they don't move from their little plaque of land, because it's just so dangerous. And if there's any humans that come into their land, then they would just kill them immediately. Because again, letting them survive and get intel, know where they are, know where they live, again, it's just so dangerous. So what would the world be that they imagined? They haven't even left their little valley, say for, could be up to thousands of years. What would they think about the outside world? They would know so little about the outside world compared to what we know today, and then you look basically what happened as time went on is then we actually left the continent, right? Figure out the world was round. And where do we go to the new world expecting to find, who knows, dinosaurs or crazy, strange beasts? And we did find that. But what else did we find? Other humans, right? We found other humans. So I think that's actually total speculation is that's what's going to happen, I think, is that it depends on the actual environment that our little solar system is in. If we happen to be surrounded by other systems that are similar to ours, because they've been, who knows, seeded with life at the same time, or we have some sort of interaction with them through these phenomena, I just suspect that we may have the same thing happen again, where we actually leave our little solar system, or we go to another planet, and what's there? Sure enough, other humans. Surprise, we're here again. They're different. They look different. They have kind of different, definitely different cultures, different languages, different ways of living, maybe even different appendages, etc. But I think they could be more similar than different, and maybe that's what we're seeing, all these bipedal aliens.
Yeah, I think that I really believe that because we will be doing those things, we will have the technology to go to other star systems. That is going to happen. Eventually, all this stuff is going to happen. But when you talk about tribal mentality. Mankind, the evolution of mankind is greatly dependent upon our reach as explorers. When we stop exploring, that's when we stop, to an extent, evolving. Right now, we're doing all of our evolving through technology, not through exploration. Not happening. So that's why it is imperative that we maybe go back to the moon or we go to Mars. But we extend our arms, we extend our reach. You don't get the 4-minute mile without someone first cracking it and doing it. What happened after that? Within the same year, 2 or 3 other people were able to run a 4-minute mile. So a lot of it is showing what can be done. And so I think that it's psychological as well as it is evolutionary. But the thing is, we're still animals. And we keep forgetting that because we're proud of ourselves and our technology. But we are animals. We are primates. Once removed, that's it. And so if you're an advanced species and you come here, you're going to be scared because we're still warning. We're still saying, this is our boundary. This is our border. You can't go on this and that. This is us, and we're segregating ourselves. And so, like when you interview an astronaut and they talk about the overview effect, they're saying that we're all on this one marble. We share this same thing together, this same existence together, but yet we're so, myopic that we can't see that. And until we get to a place where we have our crap together, we're not going to be getting any alien technology soon because, like when I give my speaking presentations, I talk about what would disclosure, like full disclosure, like what do you want? And they go, we want anti-gravity. And I go, yes, me too. How badass would that? Our jets, our planes would weigh 1/10 of what they need to weigh, right? Because they wouldn't be dependent on the thrust and everything. I said, but you know what? You could also take that technology and you could levitate some people, some enemies, some other, foreign countries off the planet. And so that's not good. And so with great, power comes great responsibility, as they say. And so once we get to that place, that to me is the big goal, getting to that place. Once we get there, I believe that a fair exchange is going to happen because right now we don't have anything to offer them. And even when, Columbus came, who doesn't discover America, but he does come here, and as others had before, there is still an exchange to some extent going back and forth, whether it's gold or whatever. But other than our biology, we don't really have anything that's terribly valuable that I've found in all the cases that exchange is happening, and so I feel like we've got to get halfway on the bridge before we fully meet them. And so that is really frustrating. And no one wants to hear that because what I'm basically telling everyone is I'm saying, we're only going to get a teaser or a trailer to the movie that's coming. And I can't tell you when the movie's going to get released, but that's what the phenomenon feels like. They are controlling it. They're controlling the release dates and everything. And so, anyway, I feel like if we start from a super grounded place, then we can be pleasantly surprised by the phenomenon where something comes up. I mean, an example of them showing up and saying, all right, we need to expedite the crap out of this is if there is, an asteroid coming or there is something disruptive coming that could wipe us out. I think then they would step in. I would hope.
Well, you mentioned the aerial school in Zimbabwe. And it seems like one of the main messages there that a lot of the kids relayed, a lot of the witnesses, was that we shouldn't destroy the planet. That basically nuclear weapons are bad. And I believe they even mentioned, climate change, et cetera. So do you think that's part of it? That they're actually interacting with our culture, with humanity to try and steer it in a certain direction?
They are definitely interacting with people, even with regards to technology. They are inspiring them. Our rocket programs and other inventions and stuff that have come across, there have been people in the past who have said that they believe that their technology was coming to them through interactions, through experiences, whether it happens when they're asleep, in unconscious states, or in other ways, but they do accredit other intelligence influencing them, not non-human intelligences influencing them. And so, yeah, I think that we're greatly being affected by the phenomenon, and I think that it's kind of this. Yeah, it's tough because we want that interaction now, and for the experiencers, abductees, they are getting it. And so that's why, kind of for me, as excited as I am about photographs and even having artifacts, and we've got some artifacts that we look at in the Alien Perspective documentary that we have Caltech give us the final solution on. It's interesting, but ultimately, I think that people who are interacting at the level that we want to with these beings, it's already happening. And so I'm interested in that being done in concert with this hard data, ships, and everything else. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like, that to me is getting a peak, even more so. Experiencers get the special features on a DVD or Blu-ray, and then we're still trying to just see the movie in the theater.
They get the background, they get the behind the scenes making of.
Yeah, the making of.
And then they seem a little, less happy about it. They seem a little depressed, or the information doesn't seem to be everything they desired.
No, and for me, as someone who isn't, again, when I've interviewed them, I am desperate, whether it's Travis Walton or experiencers that no one has heard about, which there are a lot, many, many more than we know. I get kind of frustrated because I want to say, all right, well, if this is happening, prove it, and I want to understand this aspect. And I always feel like, again, from coming from crime shows and stuff, yes, the gun and the bullet casings, that's important. But what's equally important is the testimony. And so rarely does exact evidence lead to anything. It's following a trail. This person leads to this person, et cetera. So that testimony, to me, is crucial. And so I find that, again, equally fascinating as any, Tic Tac footage.
It seems like it's just very hard to believe. People don't believe it. Like you mentioned, so fantastical. The actual experiencer accounts are so fantastical that they'll be left out of the documentaries, et cetera. Like Jake Barber, he came out with a team of people saying that he was one of the guys. For years we've been asking, where are the firsthand whistleblowers? Where are they, people that actually handled the materials? Who's out there actually doing these crash retrievals? And then Jake Barber comes out with his team, and basically no one believes him, essentially. I think it's so fantastical. They're connecting with the psionic assets. So the psionic assets came out and said, yeah, we're connecting, with our consciousness to these craft, and we just convincing them to land. There's technology that can, like whistle call, can call these craft in, supposedly. So what is your take on Jake Barber and all the recent fantastical accounts?
Well, it sucks because one aspect of the validity of it sucks because the footage he shows, which he didn't film, it's not his footage, is a big egg. And it's not kind of like an egg, it is a big egg.
Yes,
being lowered down. And you've seen the meme of Mick of Mork and Mindy, of Mork kicking out of the egg as he arrives on Earth, not helping our cause at all. That doesn't really kind of get us to the next level. Some people will argue that, but I'm just saying empirically, folks, it really kind of doesn't move the needle that much. His firsthand testimony of other things that he's witnessed certainly does. But again, there's so many great firsthand witnesses, but there's no material that you can quantifiably say, no, this is it. And the catch here is that if they do come out and say, here's a new alloy, check this out, lightweight, like Roswell, the Roswell crash, you can scrunch it up and it goes back. And we do actually have material that does that today, but things that are next level. Who gets that technology? Who's going to be monopolizing it? How do we control and so that Russia doesn't get it, and Russia isn't using this technology to wipe out the Ukrainians or other governments, Iran, other, countries that are using it against other people? Again, I keep coming back to how we're still really, primal. We're a schoolyard where, people are fighting each other. And so it comes down to, I want that technology. If we do have those crafts that are being reverse engineered, I do want us to hold them. I want us to have those cards. I don't want anyone else to have them. But the idea that crafts have crashed, and they've only crashed in areas that we can get to, and we can get there quicker than a mothership, an alien mothership, that never computes with me. But it has to be all over, and there have to be other government with retrieval programs. But like the stealth bomber, we had it, we used it, we picked the right time, and we came out. We used it during the war. No technology that I'm aware of has shown up at any of these skirmishes and wars that we have had or currently have, where people say, "Oh my God, this craft came out of nowhere, appeared, it dropped a bomb, and then it took off." Not once. We don't have one report of this. So that shows me that this technology isn't as out there as much, and that's without talking about the whole drone stuff.
Yeah, I keep thinking, I get the vision in my mind when we're chatting about someone goes to the doctor, let's say they're overweight or something, and they just want the technology, they just want the pill or the shot, which I guess we have now, or quit smoking or something. They just want the
easy.
Yeah, the easy answer, right? They want the tech. That's what we're looking for, right? We want the tech. We want the anti-gravity tech, which will make it life easy, and the planet will be great, and everything will work out fine. And I think many doctors, or I believe good doctors, would say, well, you just need to change your life habits, or eat healthier food, adopt a healthier lifestyle. Basically, it's on you to change, right? You're not going to get the easy tech that's just there's definitely going to be side effects. Like, we don't know what's actually going to happen to your body using all these additional things. Like, you need to just fix it yourselves and grow up, essentially.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. Here, I'm going to pose a question to you. Would you have rather, like a friend of ours, Bruce Joel Rubin, wrote Ghost, but he also wrote a film called Brainstorm that Douglas Trumbull, who's in our documentary, is the last interview that he gave. He did the special effects for Close Encounters 2001 Blade Runner that he directed. Douglas Trumbull directed. It was called Brainstorm, Christopher Walken. Fantastic. You put a helmet on and you record your thoughts. So if you can play the piano, you put the helmet on and then you do you play the piano and then you give the helmet to someone else, and they now can get that information of how to play the piano. So you flew jets, right?
Yep.
Okay. Would you, if someone said, I can give you this thing, put it on your helmet, and boom, like that, you're now flying a jet? Or would you rather have the experience of learning how to fly this jet, or learning how to play the guitar, and discovering these great little nuances and stuff and things that you can do and things that you've learned that have evolved you as a person by failing, by succeeding, the feeling of accomplishment at the end of getting certified and everything, all of that is wiped out. And just overnight, you have this thing and you're only going to be flying the way that gets dropped in your head. That's robbing us of our evolution. And so I don't know that we want to skip ahead and get all the answers. It's like getting a Lego set. I got a Lego set of Jaws. Big fan of Jaws, as you might be able to see here. I'm not going to go buy a completed Lego set. I want to put the thing together. So why rob ourselves of discovering inventions that lead to other inventions on top of inventions? That's part of our development. We can't skip that. It doesn't make sense. And so as frustrating as it is, and we want their technology, we will get there. Make no doubt about that. The only thing that will prevent us from that is ourselves.
Yeah.
And so when people talk about the aliens could come and they could clear up our environment, we can clean up our environment.
Yeah.
And so when I think of legislation or people who are their policies in the office that are leading to the betterment and cleaning up of our planet, how can you be involved in the UFO community at all, knowing that that is one of the big messages? There's only two messages that the aliens have told us. Your technology isn't helping you, which is either nuclear weapons or it's the smartphone. And the other is you're destroying your planet. And so you mentioned aerial school. These kids were given visions of the future, and it was gray skies and trees were burnt down, wiped out. We are a consumer nation, and we consume and consume and consume. But they're all alternatives. There are massive alternatives to things that we have. So we can have our cake and eat it too. We literally can, because I don't want to be denied certain things, creature comforts, but there are ways that we can do that responsibly. And until we get to that place, I don't want a parent out of nowhere, like someone's next door parent, coming in to our house and saying, all right, get out of the room, kids, we're going to clean this up. And then they clean it up. And then they say, okay, don't make us come back here again and do this, because they will do it again, because we won't do it if we don't clean it up.
Yeah.
We won't be self-reliant. And what's great about our civilization is we can be very self-reliant, and we can surprise ourselves and do things. And I swear to God, there's also a chance, being a proponent of the planet, or a civilization here, we could come up with technologies that trump what we're seeing from these beings. There's a possibility, every possibility that could happen. So the fact is, we're a few billion years late to the game. Our existence, our planet, our solar system came later. So if you're a technology, or you're a civilization rather, that came early, it's not like Dr. Michio Kaku says in my documentary. He says that they're not just 100 years, they could be thousands, they could be millions, they could be billions of years older than us. So yeah, it's frustrating that we're seeing someone go and play this awesome video game and doing all these incredible things. And we're like, can we get in there? And can we play that? And it's like, yeah, but first you have to learn certain things. And so I think right now the relationship is probably what it needs to be to an extent. And that sounds really frustrating. But my job as a filmmaker is to give you more of that trailer of what's to come, and to say, here we are, and here's what's coming, so you can conceptualize it better. I'm a little bit dyslexic. And so for me, when I see the Tic Tac footage and the gimbal and everything that go fast, I go, that's pretty cool, but it's almost like seeing Pong. I'm dating myself, but like the Pong game, black and white, this little, cursor hashtag that moves out. I need to see it, which is why I had this world-class animator come in and animate for the first time the Tic Tac experience. So we see it from inside Commander Dave Fravor's jet cockpit. So I think that's exciting for us to use our own technology to be able to project out and see what this is going to happen, because it is going to happen. It's just, we don't know when.
That's interesting. You mentioned that. I've also recreated the Tic Tac engagement using Digital Combat Simulator. I used DCS from his cockpit, actually. Because I think I'd seen a few recreations and it didn't seem right. Actually, I was like, no, that's not what it looks like. Like in a fighter, that's not what it looks like, because I flew 18 years. No,
but you also have to put in there. Sorry to interrupt, but you also have to put in there that the Tic Tac is reactive. Yeah. Fravor says, someone did a supercuts of him going boop boop boop, where it turns and looks at him. So I recreated that. You'd see that moment where this consciousness, which again, the craft, is it sharing consciousness with whoever's piloting it? I mean, it's 40 feet long. So that's a lot of empty space in there. There's got to be something in there. Turning. And even, my buddy Dave Foley, he was walking with Jeremy Corbell when he saw his first UFO. And what happened right before then? He said, boy, tonight would be a perfect night to see a UFO. And literally 30 seconds later, Jeremy says, look behind you. And he looks over and he sees this craft moving. So there is a communication that goes on that makes me feel like, again, one of the aspects I was talking to Lou Elizondo was, I said, I think that these crafts, I think that there's a biology within the craft embedded in the metal alloys, whatever. I think there's a consciousness, there's some type of organic thing that allows them to be reactive. And so when I think of the pilots of this thing, I wonder if it's not more an intention. I want to take this craft and I want to go here and there, rather than going up to a steering wheel and a joystick and moving it. Maybe it's something that you're more connected, on a metaphysical way. That to me seems more plausible. So when I see the Tic Tac thing, I want to see that be reactive. I want to see what that looks like and see the connection between the observer and the object. That
actually reminds me of Jake Barber. When you talk about the craft, when he basically is carrying, I believe, the octagon-shaped object, and he called it the Eightgon, and then he is somehow connected to it. And it was a metaphysical kind of like he was connecting with some sort of goddess, and he felt this intense love and was flying this, difficult mission, basically, I imagine, in the mountains at night in a helicopter alone, which is very dangerous, actually. You're focused solely on that mission, and then he ends up crying, essentially, and wondering if he can continue on with the mission. So, that like the craft is an actual entity, like a biological entity. That's just the thoughts that came to my mind.
Well, I think that what's great about like science fiction and like the movie 2001 Space Odyssey is it pulls you out of your everyday rut that you have. And there's always aspects of our lives that feel like it's in a rut. And to have all of that go away and to have it be something higher, your priorities of what to worry about go away. And so you are now present. And that is a spiritual experience. So I think that can't be underestimated. And I wish more people to experience what he has experienced, what Barber has experienced, because it's pure. And that connection between you and something that is beyond what you know. I mean, again, it's very religious, right? Because people talk about having faith and having that connection and how spiritual it is and how transcendental it is. And so I have no doubt that something that is from such an advanced, point of time or point of intelligence that it would affect you that way. That to me is so much, it's more profound than the actual nuts and bolts. It's what is the experience, and that was intentional. I believe that was intentional, that he was meant to have that heightened emotional experience.
Because the whole experiencer phenomenon is very strange. You have these very aggressive abductions, terrible experiences, and then you have like Gary Nolan, he's come out as an experiencer saying, well, he just saw these beings in his bedroom, right? I don't remember him saying anything about these negative abduction experiences. And then you have this like Jake Barber's interaction where he connects with something and he feels this intense love. So there's like this dichotomy where you have these intense love experiences, where you hear about it with near-death experiences. They die for some amount of time. They feel this intense, amazing, unbelievable love, right? Love they've never felt on Earth. They don't want to come back. Normally, the near-death experiencers don't want to come back. So then they're shoved back into the body, essentially, this painful experience. What do you take after you've talked to so many experiencers, et cetera, about this dichotomy? What's your impression?
I think that if you were to pick one emotion that you could inhabit primarily ahead of all the other ones, what would that emotion be for you?
Yeah, like love, I guess, right? It'd be the best emotion. I think we can.
Yeah, because pure love isn't judgmental. It's being open, it's being safe, and it's being able to appreciate, those moments where how many times have you it's taken forever to get food, you're doing hiking or whatever, and then you sit down, you make this food, and it just has this great taste. You're appreciating just the existence of it, the simplicity of it. Love, to me, is the most amazing built-in invention that we have. And whenever we come from a place of love, I've never found that anything has boomerangs is back on me as much as anger, vengeance, and stuff like that. And so I think that when we think about what source is, whether it's God, Jesus, or whatever you call it, they always talk about the same thing over and over again, love. And so if you are advanced, I would hope that that advanced species, that love is a main priority, and that whatever is being done is done from a place of love. And so I feel like with experiencers, even though this is definitely an ordeal, I asked them in my first experiencer group, I said, if I could say to you tomorrow, none of this will happen, or I could, make this stop right now, would you want all this to stop? Every single one of them said no. All of them said they would still want this experience because they feel like they're being chosen. They are helping. They feel like they're helping this other species in some way. And it's also helping us. And so it's this connection that's happening. And for me, I'm always looking for profound experiences, whether it's through art or through relationships. And so for him to say, Jake Barber, to say that he felt this profound love and everything, I'm like, God, man, good for you. That's awesome. How do we get some of that? I love that that was a component of this experience because it was telling him, it was connecting with him in much more powerful of a way than just visceral, going, wow, look at that UFO. It was this sense, this feeling, this love. And like you said, non-death experiences. I have a very close family member who was having a medical condition where they would leave their body. And I discovered it because they were drawing these pictures. And I said, what is this? And they said, oh, this is what I see when I leave my body. And they were drawing the grids. And it was of looking down our neighborhood. And I had to go, okay, well, that's real. Now that's firsthand experience for me that I'm witnessing, hearing about, because I was there. And so I think that there's so much more here that we don't appreciate, and that that I think that the more we get back to that, I mean, there's a lot of Buddhists that will tell you that they've seen beings, that they're able to connect with beings, and they can control it, where we can't in our monkey brains and our techno brains and stuff. We can't control it. We can't see it, So I don't know if that answers the question, but I feel like when I talk about this, that to me, the spiritual aspect of this is the thing that's going to live out longer than any fascination with any spectacle. That to me, ultimately, that component is what keeps us in the game. And I think that message is universal. And I love that. That to me is the height of optimism, that another being coming here would also have love. Thank God that exists beyond this planet.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. You said you asked all the experiencers, and even if they've had traumatic experiences, you said they all have PTSD for the most part. None of them would change it. They would still go back and I guess accept the same experience. Yeah,
the ones that I spoke with, and I've spoken with 3 groups, and I think why that is they are getting something out of this, and they agreed upon it. And John Mack talks about it, and I have this other documentary that I'm wrapping up where there is a belief system that they agreed to be a part of this program, if you will, for lack of a better word, before they came into this incarnation. And so it's an agreed upon thing to some extent. So that's kind of profound, if that's an aspect of this, and if that's real.
Well, that is amazing. So after all your experiences and being so invested in this topic for so many years, what do you, to you, what does it mean to be human? Have you learned what it means to be human?
Yeah, it's a weird time to be human right now. You can go back to also, the dark ages where it's really jacked up. But it's weird because, again, the technology, the things that we can do with sciences and AI and what we're on the precipice of. But to be human at the end of the day, again, if there's a theme, it's to love, it's to be appreciative of everyone. It's like the best way to destroy your enemy is to look at the enemy from their perspective. They don't get up and go, it's now time for me to put on my black evil cap and go out and with my 6-shooter and to be evil. Doesn't work that way. Something caused that. And a wound usually is what it is. People who are angry and violent, these come from, we know this, 2 sources. It comes from insecurity and it comes from wounds, emotional wounds. And so it's not feeling secure. And so when I look at that, whether I've got a boss that I'm dealing with who's an asshole, I go, okay, what jacked this person up? Because what they're living with is much worse than I am, because try to come at it from an open place. And so I think, being human is having ultimately unconditional love. And I'm kind of more of a Buddhist, I guess, if I'm going to say I'm anything. And I believe in karma. If I do something crappy to someone, I think it's going to come back to me. And, a lot of these near-death experiences, people talk about hell, that it doesn't exist. And the only time that it does exist is when people expect themselves to go to hell because of things they've done. And they actually spend time in a self-created hell. And then the way they come back to their present existence is they realize, oh, this is what I've constructed. I think we are our own arbiters, our punishment of what we do. And a lot of these people that have near-death experiences talk about life reviews, where you look back at your life. And again, the theme that keeps coming up for me and why I made this documentary and took, all this time is the theme, which is looking at this from another person's perspective. And so in these near-death experiences, their life review, you don't go back to those awful moments. You go back to those awful moments from the victim that you caused.
From every perspective. Yeah.
How brutal. You're like, oh my God, I'm seeing myself being pummeled by myself, doing this horrendous thing. And so nothing goes unnoticed, man. All of that stuff's being kept track of. And so if we started living like that, then I think we'd be less inclined to, yell at someone, the clerk or the waiter or whatever. We would be, nicer. So for me, I feel like that's where we're all tied together is through that. And so I think being a human is, yes, we're animals, but because we're still going from being protective and having to survive, those survival instincts, once we transcend that, which we haven't, then we're going to enter an amazing phase. But, it's still a crazy world. And so we kind of, unfortunately, like if you look at the statue of David in Florence, he's got one hand that's, firm and ready to throw down, and the other one is open. And so we're still dealing with that duality, that yin and yang. And once we can get, more into, an area where everyone agrees upon and says, all right, I'm not going to do this to you because ultimately you're going to do it back to me. That's what it means to be a human. But again, we're a work in progress, man. That's all I can say. Sorry for the long answer. We are a work in progress, and we have to enjoy the progress and, just give each other a break.
I agree. No, I think that was an amazing answer. Yeah, I thought it was amazing. I agree. Yeah, I think we're all connected. And if we can go from a zero-sum world, where we're just trying to survive as animals, you said, basically, if we can progress to a, free energy world, which I think we can get to with where we're not killing each other, we realize, hey, that human over there is pretty similar to me, actually, has the same insecurities, has the same issues, if I can just see it from his perspective. I think we'll
Yeah.
realize that we're actually very similar. You know, I've lived all around the world, different places, and that's what I've learned. Everywhere you go, people are all good. All the people I've met, you know, even like
Yeah.
our enemies, the Russians, you know, I've hung out with Russians. They were super cool. I mean, very smart, interesting, just had a completely different perspective, right? Looking at from the other side.
Yeah, I was just going to underscore exactly that um, because of being able to step outside of ourselves, that is the only way that we actually get truth, because we're biased, right? And so for me, the phenomenon and all the other docs that have been out there all been from the human's perspective. And so for me, the challenge was in this new documentary was to look at it from the alien perspective. And what would that be, even as a hypothetical? And because of that, I was able to get people who don't normally talk in the UFO field. You know, are we living in simulated reality? You know, is this all simulation? So I went and I got the guy who created the simulation reality hypothesis out of Oxford and had him talk about that perspective. I think that's how we're going to get next level. And so I feel like, again, that's the key to everything, because we get so wrapped up in our own worlds and it's super easy to be isolated,
Yep.
man. Yeah. So.
And yeah, just to go down, turn into an internet troll, you know, we all have the emotions, you know, you go down the dark holes, think only one thing, you know, these are the enemies in my country, neighbors are my enemies, etc. Where I think, yeah, if we can realize that everybody's actually trying to do their best, it's just they have different perspectives.
Yeah, and it's funny because that you say it, because I've been guilty of that, man. My
Yeah,
girlfriend would
everybody.
go over at me. Yeah, and she looks over at me and she sees my posture change, and she knows I'm on social media, and she knows I am engaging with someone. And it took me a few years to get to the place where I stopped engaging altogether, because why am I engaging? I'm only engaging for myself. Chances are I'm not going to change that person. And so, you know, because I'm a filmmaker, I'll get reviews on my films, and I kind of find it amusing when people are throwing down. And if I don't agree with it, it's even more amusing, because it's like, well, you might not like, you know, what I made, but you still plucked your money down. You still watched it. And at some level, you still got what it is. And so I created this and we had this thing and we've got open dialogue, and you're entitled to your opinion. I don't take it personal, because I know if I'm making something that everyone loves, it's going to be marginal. It's going to be this like watered down thing that's safe.
Yeah.
You know, again, 2001 Space Odyssey, great film. Stanley Kubrick, when it came out, he was eviscerated. He was told this is
Really?
a huge artistic piece of crap. They said it's at both. My favorite quote is, it's at both artistic and boring. And so the people who were the luminaries, the people who were the intellects, great intellects at New York Times, the New York and all that stuff, they all trashed it. And then when the movie was released, Stanley Kubrick is having an existential crisis. Like, I'm going to stop making movies because I don't know. I thought I'd created something that was beyond mankind and what we'd seen before. And what happens? It opens and there's lions around the block. It ends up making more money that year than any other film. So no one knows anything. And so even though I think I'm right and I'm going to challenge someone on social media, I might be wrong. And I've been proven wrong. I hate to say it, maybe as much as I've been proven right, but I just let that shit slide. I just go, that person has got themselves all worked up. And whether they're worked up from their mother's basement or they're worked up from, you know, being a CEO of a company, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. You're entitled to your opinion, bro. I'm going to move on and do my thing. And once I stop doing that, as Allie, my girlfriend, will say, then the shark in me went away. She doesn't see the shark circling the water anymore, going, oh, there's some chum. I'm going to go. And
well, thank you so much, Dean, for being here. Where can people find your work?
They can find The Alien Perspective that just came out on Apple TV and Amazon, and you can buy and rent it. I will say that part 2, because there was so much in this documentary, and the reason why I split it up is because they're a completely different vibe. It's next level. The second one goes to the next level. So there is going to be the part 2 will be coming out. So it might make sense to buy it if you're interested in it. but we'll be coming out. I can announce Contact in the Desert. We're going to have the world premiere of the Alien Perspective Part 2. But right now, Part 1 is available, and I'm also on social media. I'm on Instagram at my name, Dean Alioto, and I'm on Facebook, Dean Alioto. Instagram is the one where I do a lot of my updating. I'm also on TikTok if you're on that, and that's under my company, which is Captured Pictures Official. So that's how they can reach me and see my work.
Okay, excellent. I really enjoyed this discussion. Yeah, I agree with you in so many ways. So I really hope we do see a future where, our kids and grandkids can live in a better world where it is about love and we can control our emotions and not freak out and realize that human across the pond, is very similar to myself.
Absolutely. I enjoyed this conversation as well. This is great, Chris.
Okay, thanks, Dean. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Please check out Dean's new documentary, The Alien Perspective. Sounds very interesting. I want to check it out as well. And if you did like this, please hit the like button. Really helps the video, and share it so more people can find it. Makes it easier. If you want to support my work, go to patreon.com/Chris Lehto. We have new merch. It says it's not a duck. You can see there, it's not a duck with the gimbal. And I think the gimbal definitely hasn't been debunked, despite what anyone says, especially McWest or otherwise. And so have a great rest of your day. Peace.